الإسلام وكفى بها من نعمة. So the first thing I want to do is to give hamd for this opportunity. We give Allah shukr, and also the organizers shukr for this opportunity. Any majlis of ilm is a majlis in which حفتهم الملائكة, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the malaika are surrounding them, and تنزل عليهم السكينة, تتنزل عليهم السكينة, وتنزل الرحمة. Sakina and Rahmah are also coming down on people. And maybe actually we could turn this table instead of turning my neck all the time, since there aren't any of the sisters, so that'll be easier. So this class is on Dawah, all right, the nature of Dawah, and we're going to go for the next few weeks, inshallah, on covering the 5 branches of Dawah and the knowledges that they're needed for Dawah. Okay. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. All right, so the first thing about Dawah to know is that the greatest function that a human being can have on the earth, right, vis-a-vis other people, is Dawah. The greatest thing a person can do is dhikrullah. Okay? The greatest single deed that you can do for yourself is dhikrullah. The Prophet ﷺ said, should I tell you about something better than giving gold and silver in charity and striking your enemies and then being struck by your enemies? They said yes. He said dhikrullah. So categorically the greatest single action is dhikrullah. But the greatest action socially with other people is dawah. Okay. And how can we say that? Very simply. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, number 1, the greatest of actions, الدنيا ملعونة ملعونة ما فيها. The whole dunya is cursed. Everything in it is cursed. إلا ذكر الله وعالم ومتعلم. Except the dhikr of Allah and then a teacher and a student. Okay? Number 2, another example. Okay? All of the messengers, what do they share? Of course, we know the greatest of the khalq is the prophets, then the shuhada, and then the siddiqeen, then the shuhada, and the salihin. Now, of the nabiyeen, of the prophets, there is a class of prophets who have another title of messengers, rasul. The difference between a nabi and a rasul, okay, is 2 things. Number 1, the rasul has an obligation, okay, to fight a problem in the world and to fight an enemy. A prophet may not have an enemy. A prophet Ayyub alayhi salam, who's his enemy? Okay, it's not necessarily an enemy. Okay, there's not necessarily an enemy for prophets, and there's not necessarily a big dawah for prophets. But every rasul has a big dawah and a big enemy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we have not left any messenger except he has a big enemy. Okay? From the ins or from the shayateen. So every prophet, every messenger comes, okay, when there is a major enemy that needs to be destroyed of the ins or the jinn. Okay? Shayateen, ins or jinn. Secondly, the prophets come teaching the message of the previous messengers. The messengers come with an updated law that he teaches the people and brings down to the earth. So all of the prophets and messengers, what is their job and their duty, specifically the messengers, is that they give dawah. Right? They give dawah. Amongst the messengers, you have the 5 mentioned in one ayah, which we know as ulul azm. Right? Those of the strongest and most powerful message. Those are the ulul azm. And the ulul azm, of course, are Prophet Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad ﷺ, and then before them, Nuh ﷺ. So the bigger the mission, the greater their rank as messengers. Okay. Now, one of the reasons the Prophet ﷺ, why is he the greatest of the prophets? And this is by ijma', required to believe. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the chief of the messengers. He's their chief. In Aqsa, when he went on the Isra, which we believe in, it's wajib to believe in the Isra. Okay, it's in the Quran. Whoever rejects Isra, alright, he's rejected the first ayah of Surah Al-Isra. And if you reject one ayah of the book, then you reject the entire author of the book. Right? Who is the Imam of the prayer there? Right? Prophet ﷺ. He led all the prophets in the prayer. And we know in fiqh, if you go to a book of fiqh, who should be the Imam? Okay? Who should be the Imam? Always, right, the one who memorized the most, the one who has the most knowledge, okay, the one who's most senior. You not just put up anyone as the Imam, right? So if that's the fiqh of the Muslims, then that's also the fiqh of the prophets. The greatest of them will be the Imam. And another proof, Jerusalem is not the city of the Prophet ﷺ, right? A man is not led in the prayer in his house, right? You don't go to someone's house and lead the prayer. He's the Imam, even if you are bigger than him and you're greater than him, right? In knowledge, and even if the sheikh comes to your house, you are the rightful Imam unless you give him permission, right or wrong. Okay? No one gave the Prophet permission to go lead the prayer. He led the prayer. Okay? So, the Prophet ﷺ, he's the chief of the messengers. For one main reason, is that his message is a'am. It is broader than the message of all previous prophets. Prophet Musa ﷺ, was he giving dawah in Africa? Did he send his Sahaba to China? No. They had a limit. What was the limit of the dawah of the Prophet Musa ﷺ and all the Bani Israel? From Ibrahim ﷺ until the Prophet Isa bin Maryam, the dawah was restricted to the Bani Israel. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and every prophet, Allah tells us in the Quran, there is not a single land except we send a prophet. But that prophet, he has a jurisdiction. Okay? He doesn't go do dawah everywhere he goes. He's not responsible for the whole world. He's responsible for that location, that locality. Okay? So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, his jurisdiction is the greatest of all. It's the entire world, entire earth. Okay? Entire earth. Secondly, he's not muqayyad bil-zaman. Every messenger, he comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken an oath in the Quran upon every prophet. لَإِنْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ لَتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ وَلَتَنْصُرُنَّ. Okay? If another prophet comes, what do? You submit to him. Okay? You submit to him. Now you're in charge. That means, if you have a prophet, Harun is a prophet, right? Musa comes, Musa's in charge. Now if sometime later another prophet comes, the prophets at that time must submit to him. Like who? How about Prophet Yahya and Prophet Isa bin Maryam? They're both Anbiya, right? But one of them is the Imam. Who is in charge at that time? Is Prophet Isa bin Maryam. His rank is higher than his Prophet Yahya. Okay, his cousin. Okay? So every prophet is told, before you come down, there's an oath that if another prophet comes, you must submit to that prophet. Okay? And you become his supporter. Let's take another example. Okay? Who came first, Prophet Muhammad or Prophet Isa bin Maryam? Of course, Prophet Isa, we know that. But Prophet Isa ﷺ, he hasn't died yet. He's still going to live again. When he lives again, under whose sharia is he going to be? He's going to pray as a Muslim, collect zakat as a Muslim, apply the sharia, following the sharia of Muhammad ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ is the greatest prophet because one of the reasons is because his dawah is the greatest of dawahs. So again, returning the theme back, that the greatest function a person can have on the earth with other people is dawah. And amongst dawah now, in dawah, you're going to divide it up into 5 types. There are 5 types of dawah. Okay? Now these are not the only reason people enter into Islam. People enter into Islam because many people get confused by this. Okay? Many people get confused by this. People enter into Islam and become better and improve and all these things for two different reasons, mainly. Number one is da'wah. Number two is akhlaq. Just by the nature of it, they like the way people act. They like the way someone is talking to them or giving them attention, so they start following their path and being inquisitive. So why am I saying this? Because da'wah is a deliberate action. We don't say here, and what you're not going to hear is little tricks and gimmicks. Smile, it's da'wah, right? Or shovel the driveway of your neighbor because it's good da'wah, okay? This is actually, the result may be the same, but the actions are different. One is akhlaq and one is da'wah. Okay, so what happens if the person rejects the da'wah? You're going to stop, right? Is that how it is, right? Only because you want to get them to do something. So you're being nice, right? No, this isn't actually how the Prophet, peace be upon him, behaved. He was that way because that's who he is, right? That's how Allah created him. That's how Allah raised him. Addabani Rabbi fa'ahsana ta'deeb. My Lord taught me, educated me, okay? And he did an excellent job. So that's how we should be regardless. Here's my question to people, right? I always see on Facebook after there's a snowstorm, a group of Muslims, they're going around shoveling all their neighbors' driveways. Why? So that they can have a good impression of Islam. Alright, let's just say hypothetically, the whole world changed, and you're the Sultan, and the Muslims are ruling all these people. Are you going to do that now? Or only because you needed points, right? But it's very important. Akhlaq should not be limited and restricted to trying to get them to like you or to like your message. Right? It should be fi sabilillah because this is how the Prophet was taught and this is how he taught us to be. That's it. And what's the proof of this? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his teacher is the Prophet ﷺ. The neighbor of the Prophet was cursing him every day, throwing garbage in front of his door. We know the story, right or wrong. Then the garbage stopped coming. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He went and he asked about them, and they were sick, and he visited them. And as a result, they entered into Islam. Okay. Let's take a look at Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the student of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to see what the Prophet's true teaching about akhlaq is. It is said that there's a story of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq that Omar discovered something funny was happening with Abu Bakr. That Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was not sitting for the tasbih after Fajr like everyone else. He would pray Fajr and immediately go outside of the masjid in a direction opposite of his house. Opposite of his house. Now this is not something that's normal for Abu Bakr to do because we know that the sunnah is pray Fajr and stay up a little bit, preferably until the sun comes up fully. Okay? So when Fajr is out, that's when the tip of the sun has come up. It takes about 20 minutes for the entirety of the sun to come up. When the sun is partially coming up, it's haram to make salah. Until the sun is totally up, it's mandub to pray 2 rakas, right? And then you can go about your day. And the Prophet said there's a huge reward for someone who stays from Fajr all the way to Ishraq, making dua and dhikr. Okay? And there's different hadiths that this is the reward of Hajj or the reward of Umrah or the reward of Hajj and Umrah. Okay? Without decreasing the obligation to go do a Hajj and Umrah. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he is the example of the Muslims, right or wrong. Why isn't he doing this? And the Prophet and Umar ibn Khattab was very clear. If you are the Khalifa, the Amir of the Muslims, or one of the elders of the Muslims, you need to be practicing what you do. And we know in Muwatta Imam Malik, a Sahabi came in during Jum'ah while Umar is on the minbar. And Umar ibn Khattab became upset. And he looked at him and he said, Ayy waqtin hada? What time is this for you to come to Jum'ah? In the middle of the khutbah? Which showed that this Sahabi was not a regular Sahabi. He was from the kibar of the Sahaba, and some people said it's Uthman ibn Affan. Ayy waqtin hada? So he rebuked him in front of everyone. Why? Because if everyone sees that the great Uthman bin Affan comes late to Jum'ah, okay? And Umar is there and says nothing about it. Then at next week, what's going to go across people's head? I can come late too. Well, he did it. So, this Sahabi, who Imam Malik didn't mention his name, but the explainers tell us it was Sayyidina Uthman. He said, ما فعلت إلا أن توضأت وأتيت. He said, I didn't do anything, but I was far away. I made wudu as soon as I heard that then, and I came. And then Omar got on top of him for that. He said, wudu as well. And you know the Prophet obligated ghusl on Jummah, right? So the Omar made it clear to the people, take Jummah seriously. Okay? Take Jummah seriously. So when Omar sees that Abu Bakr, Khalifat al-Muslimin, he's leaving Fajr in front of everyone. Okay? After Salah right away. Now Omar has to do something about it. So he follows him. See, what is he doing that is that good, that important? When he followed him, he found Omar is entering a house. Okay, he's entering. Abu Bakr Siddiq is entering a house. When Abu Bakr got to the house, okay, he sat there and he heard pots and pans going, and he heard water slushing around. Then he waited and he hid behind a tree, and then Abu Bakr left. Then he asked the next person that he saw, who lives there? Then they said, a woman lives there alone. Oh, a woman, right? They said, tell me more about this woman. This is getting more, it was getting worse. Leaving Fajr, then going to visit a woman, right? Who lives alone? They said, no. It's not like that at all. It's such an old lady who's blind, she can't do anything for herself. So Abu Bakr, after Salah, comes down and cleans her house. Okay? Cleans her house and prepares her food for the day. Then leaves. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, I mean, if you're president, if you're the governor of a state, not Amir al-Mu'mineen, you don't even cook your own breakfast. Right? You don't even cook your own breakfast. If you want a drink of water, someone goes to get it for you. This is what he's doing. So this is why I'm asking myself, if we preach to the people and link akhlaq to dawah, then we're only having akhlaq and doing akhlaq when we're inferior, right? When we're weak, when we're in a low position. And this is no good. Akhlaq is different from dawah completely. Akhlaq has to go on even when dawah can stop. Because as we're going to see, there are 5 modes or branches of dawah. Once you complete one, it can stop. Right? You don't have to do it anymore. But akhlaq is something we should not confuse with dawah, because akhlaq should continue until your death. Not just because you're using it for political means or for other means. Okay? So have akhlaq with the intention of akhlaq and separate this from dawah completely. Again, the whole proof of this story is to show Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ did not do akhlaq, have akhlaq, to win people over only. That's not the only reason. If they did, that's excellent. And the proof is that Abu Bakr, even as Khalifa, he did those things. So we have to ask ourselves, when you're in charge and everyone is a Muslim, are you still going to do these things? I don't think so, right? I don't think you're going to have some college kids, if the Muslims are in charge, right? They're not shoveling no one's driveway, right? They're not. So we got to make sure it is based upon a right intention to begin with. Now we can separate that issue of akhlaq and smiling and holding doors, right? For dawah. And we all know. Tell me, how does it feel when you're sitting on a plane and someone's talking to you, and then they're being really nice and really, really nice. Then all of a sudden they say, "Have you heard the good news? What? Jesus has come." Okay, so you know that they're being nice because they want to proselytize and make you a Jehovah's Witness or something, right? And how does that make you feel? It makes me say, you munafiq. You're just munafiq. You're not really nice. You're trying to be nice to hook me, right, into coming into your religion. So how does it make you feel? You don't like it? Raise your hand if that's ever happened to you by anyone, okay? Because I know it's happened to me a couple times. And it's like, oh, after all this, you really had me going. I thought you were a nice guy. Just because you're a nice guy. But no, you have an agenda, right? So you don't want to be those people. So dawah should be dawah, and akhlaq should be akhlaq. Okay? And, this is the thing, they may end up in the same result. They may end up in the same result. Okay? But doesn't mean the intention is the same. Now let's talk about the branches of dawah. Okay? The first branch of dawah is tabligh, which is giving the message. Tabligh. Someone who doesn't have La ilaha illallah, and you are giving them the message from scratch. This was the dawah in Mecca. Okay? In Mecca al-Mukarramah, this was the main dawah. Now, in Medina, Tabligh was the dawah for about a year. Okay? Mus'ab ibn Umair went and did Tabligh. By the time the Prophet ﷺ had come, most of the people were Muslim. Okay? And within a year of the time of the Prophet ﷺ, almost all of the Aus and the Khazraj had entered Islam. So now the Tabligh inside of Medina stopped. You don't need to do Tabligh if everyone knows La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay? And even amongst the Jews, there was no need to do Tabligh because they hear the adhan. Everyone's a Muslim now, so they know. Okay? Now we move to the second part of dawah, is ta'aleem. And this part of dawah is what happens in the Muslim society non-stop. Ta'aleem is actual education in the deen. Okay? Actual education in the deen. Thirdly, after ta'aleem is, some people have knowledge now, but they need reminders. And we call this wa'adh. Wa'adh. Like, what is wa'adh? I've seen Homer, he's got something called Musalla talks, right? Little talk after Fajr, little talk after Isha, right? Wa'adh. Exhortations, okay? Reminders. Like, you don't have to be a scholar to give these little short snippets. 5-10 minutes here or there. That's wa'adh. Wa'adh is very important, and we're going to talk about that. Fourthly is a huge part. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa-nahy anil-munkar. Commanding right and forbidding wrong. Commanding right and forbidding wrong is humongous. If you want to have barakah in your life, do commanding right and forbidding wrong. But you got to learn the rules of it first. Because you might end up commanding wrong and forbidding right. Right? People who haven't looked the matter deeply, they might end up reversing it. Then we go to the fifth aspect, which is the fastest route to doubt, right? But it's really politically incorrect. So we have to make a disclaimer that we're just talking about this in theory and not advocating, okay, anything, because then Tanveer is going to end up being arrested after this, for organizing this class. But the ulama, they put jihad, the jihad of conquest. So they have different types of jihad. But the futuhat, the conquests of the Muslims that they did, this is the fastest route to doubt, right? This is the fastest route. Umar bin Khattab and Uthman bin Affan, what did they do? And the Prophet ﷺ inside of Arabia, they went in, Aslim Taslim, right? Now we're bigger than you, right? We're bigger than you. So cut to the chase. Your Amir, whoever it is, your king, you either enter Islam, okay, or resign, or meet us at the battlefield. And most of them, they didn't want to meet at the battlefield, or they did, okay? And then at the end of the day, what's the result? The result is that the Muslims now are in charge of the governance of that land. Okay. So what do? They now establish masajid, and they prohibit temples, and they prohibit the preaching, public preaching of any other religion. Okay. And then slowly, the population enters into Islam from that. So many people think that when you see that little map of the Muslim world, you have a little green spot in Medina, right? Then, by the end of the Prophet's life, all of Arabia is green. Then, by the end of Umar's life, like half the world is green, right? But you have to know that the governance only expanded. The Muslim cities, you could just circle them. Little Muslim cities here and there where the soldiers lived and established a city. Like in Iraq, you had Kufa, right? The rest of Iraq was not Muslim, right? So the Muslims were for 300 years, a minority ruling over the majority. Now, this is not going to last, right? A minority cannot rule a majority for long. So it took 300 years. By 300 years, 50% of the population had entered Islam. So you realize that the Muslims were living as rulers over non-Muslims, a non-Muslim majority, for 300 years. Okay, with the exception of Arabia. So Egypt, Syria, Persia, Iraq, North Africa, all the way to Morocco, Andalusia, all of these areas for first 300 years after the Hijrah, okay, well, again with the exception of Arabia, they were not, the majority was not Muslim. Okay? The rulers were Muslim. So now within 300 years, more than 50%, it took 300 years for half the population to enter Islam. All right? Half the population to enter Islam. And this is what the demographic, the people of demographics are basically estimating, a rough estimate. Okay? So you see that how can you get that many million or hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people to enter Islam? The easiest way is if you rule their country, right? And you disallow the public preaching of any other religion, and you have the adhan going 5 times a day, right? And you have all these benefits of being Muslim, then many people entered into Islam for that reason. Okay? So that is actually considered one of the fastest routes of Dawah, okay, is to conquer people's land. And again, it's not an endorsement, and there's not going to be a future MCMC program. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's go to page 2 of this. Excuse me. And start reading about tabligh, ta'aleem, wa'az, amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, and jihad. All right. Go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The 5 branches of Dawah. Dawah can be considered the large tent under which is subsumed all forms of transmitting the message of the deen from one party to another. In total, there are 5 branches. Tabligh. This comprises of delivering the message of Tawheed and Nubuwah, the prophecy, to those who have not previously heard it. This was the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca, and was likewise the da'wah of the Prophets Nuh alayhi Ibrahim alayhi. It was also Prophet Musa's invitation to Fir'aun. But it was not the da'wah of the Prophets Dawood or Isa, for example, because they came to a people who had already believed in Allah Azza wa Jal. To call to any pillar of faith that is missing falls under tabligh. For example, the da'wah to Ahl Kitab, the people of the book, is a call to belief in prophets, which they do not believe in, and is thus a form of tabligh.
All right. So tabligh is the da'wah to people who are not Muslim at all. Okay, and to try to bring them into the fold of Islam, and we're going to look at the knowledges required for that afterwards. Keep going.
In all of da'wah, there is no reward greater than that of succeeding in tabligh. When the Prophet ﷺ gave Ali radiallahu anhu the standard before the battle of Khaybar, he advised him, move slowly and deliberately, for Allah to guide one man through you is better than the reddest of camels, meaning the most valuable spoils of war.
All right, are there any, this is basically the summary of what we say when we say the word tabligh. All right, tabligh is, as the Prophet said, balagh al-risala, to transmit the message to those who don't believe and those who are outside the fold of Islam. This is actually the greatest form of da'wah, because this is what the Prophet ﷺ did in Mecca, and this is basically saving a soul from hellfire bi'idhnillah. Right? This is the biggest form of da'wah. Whenever the Muslim ummah leaves this, right, you see some failure in the ummah somewhere, and we've left it. And this is why there's problems, right? Now, when you navigate interfaith, you have to be very careful, right? You have to be very careful, okay? How people navigate the genre of interfaith, and also civil rights work. Why is this? When we talk about civil rights, we got, for example, we say it's African Americans, Latinos, Muslims. This is the latest thing. We're in this camp of minorities, fighting for civil rights, right? Now, African American is a race. Latino is an ethnicity, not a race. There could be black Latinos, and white Latinos, and brown Latinos, okay? So it's not a race, it's bigger than a race. A religion is a whole nother ballgame, because it comprises race and ethnicity, and it's by choice. So we have to be careful with all the Muslims that are jumping onto the civil rights and social justice working bandwagon, how you operate. Because you are not the same as other minorities. First of all, you can choose not to be a Muslim, right? A black man cannot choose not to be black. And a Latino cannot choose to be not Latino. But a Muslim kid can choose not to be Muslim. And therefore he's out of it, right? He thinks he's safe. Okay? So religion is by choice. It comprises all of these, race, ethnicity. And it's a choice, but mainly, the main problem that I see in the civil rights and social justice situation is that people are aiming for the right to be accepted or to be accepted. This is an appropriate goal for a race and an ethnicity, to be accepted. For a religion, that is not the goal, right? So when we are fighting for Muslims to be accepted, you are fighting the wrong fight, and it's not a fight that the Prophet ﷺ fought, okay? Because the Quraysh offered him, we will worship your God one day, and you worship our God another day, right? So it means you're accepted. And it doesn't say that you have to do it, just leave the public sphere for one day, and the public sphere is yours the next day. The Prophet rejected. They said, oh, okay, let us give you all the wealth, the women, and we'll make you the king of Mecca, if this is what you want. He said, I don't want it. I'm here to deliver a message. So, power, acceptance. They tried to lure him by acceptance. And they tried to lure him by power. And they tried to lure him another way too. They said, we will accept your entire religion, but don't curse our gods. Right? All three of these, or aside the power side, is happening now. The Prophet rejected it. He rejected the offer that they will accept Islam, but don't curse our gods. Right? This is exactly what happening, and a lot of people who go into social justice work, right, and civil rights work, fall into this. That, yeah, these people are helping us, and they're accepting us, so we have to stay silent about their problems, right? or their criticism. We won't criticize them. Okay. What these people are missing is that religion did not come. We are not here so that we can be accepted. We are here as Muslims because we have a mission. If you're a Muslim, you have inherited a mission from your Prophet. Okay? And you need to fulfill that mission. You need to live for that mission. And if you have to be persecuted for the sake of that mission, then you should enjoy that persecution. Right? If you're going to be persecuted for no other reason, then you could fight that. But for the mission, okay, for the mission, we're not saying sister's persecuted for hijab, do nothing. No. But persecuted for giving the mission, you should be honored. And what's the proof of this? We have the great Sahabi, Uthman ibn Mad'un. Uthman ibn Mad'un. The Prophet ﷺ said, Uthman, do not speak to them. Do not go out and instigate anything. He's trying to help him. But no, Uthman couldn't stand it. So, the great poet Labid was coming. And Labid, this is like a big deal for them. Come and sit around the fire and listen to a poet all night. Labid said, Ala wa kullu shay'in siwa Allah batilu. He said a line of poetry. He said, everything besides Allah is batil. Right? Now, Uthman ibn Maf'un and human nature. When someone who's not on the right religion says something true, what do you do about it? You don't accept it. Right? And he did that. He said, no, you're wrong. The pleasures of Jannah are eternal. Okay? So they took so much offense from that. They beat him up so badly that he couldn't see out of one of his eyes. His one eye was patched up. And so they took him, and the Prophet ﷺ came and visited him after he had woken up because he passed out from the beating that he took. And he said, Uthman, what happened? Right? And other people blamed him. They said, didn't we tell you don't talk? Right? He said, by Allah, my good eye is jealous of my bad eye. Like, I want to go back and get beaten up again. Because that's the mission. Because when someone who is on the wrong says something correct about Allah, we still don't follow him in it. I'll give you another dalil. Prophet Isa bin Maryam. We know Prophet Isa, Shaitan talked to him a lot. Shaitan came to Prophet Isa bin Maryam. And he said, Shaitan, Prophet Isa looked at him, what do you want now? What is it? He said, say la ilaha illallah. What do you do when Shaitan comes to you and says, say la ilaha illallah? Look at how clever he is. Right? Because if you say it, what have you done? You've obeyed him. Right? And if you don't say it, what have you done? rejected the kalima, right? So what did he say? We learn a lesson from this. He said, I will say it, but not after you. I will say it, but I'm not going to obey you, right? So Labid saw this too, right? Labid, Uthman bin Mad'un, the man said something correct, right? Nothing truly exists except Allah Azza wa Jal. Exists forever, right? Except Allah Azza wa Jal. That's actually, he was a pagan, but in that moment he said something correct. But Labid said, no, we can't accept for him to be an authority. So he contradicted him, and he got beaten for that. So, if it's for the sake of the message, right, we welcome that persecution. But of course, this isn't to deny the validity and the importance of all the civil rights workers. May Allah reward them, from all the people of CARE and all the people who are working in this field. But what's most important is not that canceling out that work. That would be ridiculous. We need these people, right? There's a guy named Hassan Shibli. Ever hear of him? You got to watch his videos. This guy's really good. Hassan Shibli. He's out in Tampa, Florida, right? He's a CARE guy. He is really good, right? And all these lawyers, Delia Mujahid, all these people, we support them. But we have to have a greater vision of our existence here. It is not to be accepted. Who cares whether they accept you or not, right? Okay, so they accept you, but they don't accept your prophet and they don't accept your God. Are you satisfied? No, you got a mission. And this is something we need to inject in the Ummah again because we lost it. All we want to do is be very happy when we show up in a Coke commercial in the Super Bowl. Or a Google commercial. Oh, there's a hijab. Oh, yeah, it's nice for a little Muslim girl, she sees this, she says, oh, hijab is everywhere, alhamdulillah. So I'm not negating it. But to stop there is a failure. Right? So I'm not negating all the good work that people are doing. I support them, not hating on those people. But to stop there, okay? To stop there is a failure. That you didn't even understand, you missed the whole point. Okay? You missed the whole point. And I'm telling you there's a lot of nifaq and hypocrisy going on. Where? All the Muslims now, we want to support, like Black Lives Matter, right? Okay, we want to support that. Why is that? Because we feel like we can't speak up for our own civil rights situation if we're not speaking up for Black Lives Matter, right? So I want to ask the question, if you were the ruling class, would you still support that? Right? If you had no problems in the world, if the Muslims were completely at peace and no one bothered you, right? And they loved you, and there were a poor people suffering, would you still get up? This is why I'm telling you, gotta separate. Certain things are not, and Dawah are different. Because I see some hypocrisy, right? We are all over trying to help other minorities. Why? Just so that they could help us. This is not the right way. This is not the right way. Always flip it. If I was victorious and living peacefully, would I still do that? You should. You better. Right? You better. So it shouldn't be just because we're a minority, so we're playing the whole minority game in the civil rights game. That's not the motivation of civil rights work. Okay? So we got tabligh, and this is very important. We have a mission, and you have to instill this in yourselves, in your children, and in Dawah. Who is involved in tabligh? Every single operation that could potentially lead to someone improving themselves in the deen, or bringing a non-Muslim, non-believer into Iman, in whatever capacity, he should make the intention of tabligh, and he will get the reward of it. Prophet ﷺ said, if you prepare a horse for khuruj in war, you get the reward of a soldier, right? The reward of a soldier. So we have to all intend tabligh. And tabligh, another thing that I'm telling you, I feel that we've totally lost it. We've adopted a binary lifestyle that separates between the suburbanites and those who live in the inner city and the hood. Right? We totally don't relate to them. We do all of our dawah for other suburbanites to accept us and to maybe come in. How much dawah are we given to the people? If dawah is solely to save souls and not for politics, to bring in elites into Islam or to bring in the middle class, right? Which is not wrong. If dawah is solely to save souls bi'idhnillah, then the people in the inner city are much more primed and ready, and they have a track record of accepting Islam. They have a track record of accepting Islam. They're accepting Islam before any of us were doing dawah, right? So why is it that most dawah organizations have abandoned completely the inner cities and are only focusing on, all right, the suburban neighborhoods? Okay, why is it that we do this, which we're all guilty of, right? Why is it that we behave like this, and we separate between the two? Because the poor man, when he enters Islam, he'll do nothing for us. But if a nice lawyer and his family come into the masjid, that's going to change things, because that lawyer he's got a wife, and that wife has a mom, and right, and the lawyer has a dad, and they're all going to talk and they soften each other's view towards Islam, and we all benefit from that. Okay. But if our true mission here is for the souls of people, then the soul of a person in the inner city, and who is poor and ineffective and rejected by society, and the soul of a powerful elite in the suburb is the same soul. It's the same value in the sight of Allah. A nafs is a nafs, right? A kafir died time of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet stood up for the passing of the funeral. Okay? Stood up for it. They said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, no, he's a kafir." Prophet ﷺ said, "Alaysat nafsan? Isn't it still a soul that Allah created?" Right? It's still a soul. The soul is a soul in the sight of Allah. But we have favoritism. Wallahi, we have favoritism. Am I right or wrong? We have favoritism. We do not really focus on the people who are actually ready to accept the message. Right? And subhanAllah, so much of this goes on in the Gulf states, where if a rich Westerner or European comes to the Gulf, the treatment that he gets, right? And sometimes, even in the name of dawah, they present him a gold Quran or something like that, right? Meanwhile, I mean, if you gave a free sandwich to some of these Nepal Filipinos that are working and building your buildings, he'll enter Islam, right? If you give him a decent salary and treat him nicely and say, "Look, enter Islam and we'll give you a green card or something," they'll all enter Islam. We don't care about what we should care about. And our whole ummah needs to get back on track on its mission, right? And this is the value of tabligh. So whenever you look around now, how we interact with others, we have to make sure our actions are pure, right? And that we're operating on tabligh. All right, so it's now 9:15. What time did we start? 8:30? Yeah. All right, so let's, we can stop here on the matter of tabligh. So we did the introduction, the superiority of dawah as the greatest social function that a person could do and have in this world. And then we talked about the first overview of the 5 branches, and then the first branch, which is tabligh, which is something we have to instill in our kids and ourselves. We exist here on this earth for a mission. If you don't feel like you have a mission, you're pointless. And acceptance is not our goal. To be accepted is not your goal. For people to accept your God is your goal and your prophet. All right, so we'll stop here, and if anyone has any comments or questions, and open up the discussion, we can do that now too.
Is it okay to the last point that you just mentioned, giving people money or sandwiches to lure them into the deen? Is that really the purpose here? Like, aren't people should enter the deen for after being accepted?
Yeah. So that's the same. Yani, the thing is with that is that it's tricky. It's tricky because we do have an example from the Prophet ﷺ, which he called al-mu'allafati qulubuhum, which is that someone who is so close to entering into Islam, right? Like he's on the border. You can use material gifts to win over his heart. Okay, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Jubilat al-qulubu ala hubbi man ahsana ilayha," which means the heart is naturally inclined to love the one who does good to it. Okay, so yeah, there is something in our Sharia that allows that. Okay, that if someone khalas is like on the border, or he entered in, and you feel that maybe he entered by force, or because he's defeated, either one, okay, they are permissible recipients of zakah. And the Prophet ﷺ did do this to them. And the Ansar felt funny about it, right? They felt, subhanAllah, we fought with you 8-9 years until you conquered Mecca. Now you conquered Mecca. And then you went for the battle of
What?
no, the battle of no, next door, Ta'if, against Ta'if. Okay, the battle against Ta'if. Okay, what's the battle called again? Hunayn, because the area was called Hunayn. Okay, against Ta'if, Hunayn. Very rich people, very rich people, right? Conquered them. Then what did the Prophet do with all the spoils of war from Hunayn? He gave it to the brand new Muslims who he felt really entered Islam because they're conquered and defeated. Okay? These are called al-mu'allafatu qulubuhum. Okay? So we did give them some monetary gifts in order for them to... And one example, for example. There was a man, he was talking ill of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? He was talking ill of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet heard of this, that he took the Shahada. He came, said, Shahid la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Now, time for the battle of Hunayn. So they all went for the battle. And the whole way there, he is cursing the Prophet, talking badly about the Prophet. So after the battle, it so happens that there was a huge valley filled with animals. And the Prophet saw this man looking at them. Right? Just, wow, all these sheep, goats, right? Camels. And the Prophet ﷺ said, do you like what you see? So the man turned and he found the Prophet. And so he gave him a smart answer. He said, and what difference does it make if I like what I see or not? And why was that even a subject? So the Prophet ﷺ said, what if I told you it's all yours? Right? So the man said, yes, you're a messenger, right? But I didn't know that you make fun of people too, right? He said, I don't make fun of people, I only speak the haqq. It's all yours. So the man ran like a child towards this valley, shouting, there is no man who fear more generous than the Prophet. There's no man I love more than the Prophet. So is this like chemistry? If this food tastes a little bland, add some salt and it'll be good. If people's hearts aren't quite there, giving them gifts will bring them nearer to your heart, right? And the Prophet ﷺ used this technique. Right? He used this technique. And he did this. So there is a value into it. Yeah.
Look, when we also get this, the misrepresentation of Islam, right, that is in the society. And the best way to kind of, that I understand, the best way to counteract it is by being a good Muslim in public. Right? So that's sort of our way of doing outreach, to tell people that, hey, we exist in the society and we do positive things here. That line always gets blurred between dawah and that approach of outreach.
Yeah.
How do we maintain that? Or does it need to be maintained? Or is that, what should be the end goal here?
So this is why it's important. Because you always got to ask yourself if the situation is reversed. Because why is it that the Prophet ﷺ said that there are three people who worship Allah, all are accepted, but one is better than the other? The one who worships out of fear, the one who worships out of desire, and the one who worships out of love. So why is it that one is better than the other? Because the one who worships out of fear, as soon as he is secure, he lets up his worship, right? The one who worships out of desire, as soon as he gets what he wants, he stops waking up for tahajjud and giving sadaqah. But the one who has come to just love this habit, he just loves tahajjud. It doesn't matter if he has a need or not. Or he loves giving sadaqah, right? It's just part of his DNA now, right? That one, rain, shine, good times, bad times, will always give sadaqah. So when it comes to akhlaq, yes, it may be that many people will enter the path of being upright because they have to for political reasons. So I know a lot of people who are very much into the dunya, very much into the dunya, very rich people. Never prayed, never fasted, never really cared for these things, except very little. But once 9/11 happened, and now his associates with which they do business deals, the people that he invites to his house, all these people are now looking at him with an eye of suspicion. He ran to fix his situation. He started becoming a better Muslim. He started being involved with the civil rights operations, inviting more people to his house to explain Islam, right? And I know this person, if the situation is reversed, he'll step on those people, right? That's how he is. But when you put him in that situation, okay, all of a sudden he's really good. So what we say about that is that this is good, accept it as long as it's a phase. Until that person actually is involved in dawah for the sake of dawah and is good to his neighbors. Now all of a sudden this guy's giving New Year's bonuses to everyone so that his coworkers can say, my Muslim, because he literally says this stuff to us. He said, I want them to say, my Muslim boss gave me a bonus, right? So you can clearly see that his main initiative or motive is PR, basically. But we say about that, it is good and accepted as long as that becomes a phase. That is a phase. Eventually it should be, he's good to them because that's how the Prophet taught us to be with people, good or bad. A good political situation or bad political situation. So you see, that is how we have to view it. As, yes, it is accepted, but it should be a phase. Right? It should be a phase. And the best people to look at is the lives of the Sahaba. Because when the Sahaba were in Mecca being persecuted, and when they were governors, and they were rich, and they were in charge of Iraq and Persia and Syria and Egypt, their behavior was the same. Specifically, those who entered Islam in Mecca. Like Bilal ibn Rabah, Bilal Habshi. Like Khabbab ibn al-Arat. Okay. Like Abu Darda in Medina. In poverty, in persecution, in wealth, in victory, they are the same. This is real akhlaq now, not akhlaq for the sake of PR, which again, to repeat, is accepted if it's a phase in someone's development. All right, a phase only. Does that answer the question? Yep.
You mentioned about civil liberty organizations and how they work, and it is good to strategically work with them and organize, let's say, protest or some other event. But in the name of civil liberty, these organizations are the same that would try to secure rights in the name of civil liberty as for homosexuality or same-sex marriage and things like that. So how do we deal or interact with these organizations in that respect? Because you would see a lawyer, let's say, fighting for our case, but at the same time, the same lawyer would be in that situation.
Yeah. So they all have entered into a secular framework, right? They've allowed themselves to be entered into a secular framework, and they're going to be in trouble soon. They're going to have to support those who support them or be consistent, right? It's like most of this work is like I scratch my back, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back type of thing, right? And you're going to end up contradicting yourself. Why? Because you entered into a framework that is not your framework, right? It's a man-made framework. So that's why I would much rather our ummah and our community be completely consumed with the goal, right, of dawah. It is a far superior and a superior goal, motive, and action than protecting yourself and your rights, right? We have something bigger than us. We have something greater than ourselves, right? even though those who are doing that work are also doing great work. But to me, they're only doing great work if and when they recognize the greater goal. Like, you can have three things, each superior to the other. Let's take, for example, Salatul Fajr, the Sunnah before Fajr, and Tahajjud. Right? Tahajjud is great, right? But not if you're sleeping through Fajr. Sunnah of Fajr is great, but not if you're making it like right before Fajr goes out and you miss Fajr. What do you say to someone who sleeps through, who prays Tahajjud every night, but because he prays such long Tahajjud, he just puts his head down before Fajr and sleeps through Fajr? What do you say to him? Your Tahajjud is batil, everything about you is wrong. Right? Umar bin Khattab, there was a young man who he used to see in the masjid. Then for days he wouldn't see him in the masjid anymore. So he passed by his house and he said to his mom, "Where is your son? I don't see him in the masjid anymore." She said, "He has now become a man of tahajjud. And because he prays such long tahajjud, he's too tired to make it to the masjid for Fajr. So he makes wudu in the house and he prays 2 quick rak'ahs and he goes to sleep." He said what he had before was better. That you pray Fajr in the masjid, okay, with the jama'ah, is better than for you to pray a long tahajjud, then sleep and just quick 2 rak'ahs in your house. So, likewise with civil rights and civil liberties. All these organizations that are doing good. But the good is not good if you're missing the total point. And that's why I say Hassan Shibli, he's got it down right. Because he understands we are a group of people, we are a religion, not an ethnicity or a race. We have a mission. And their job, these people's job, is to protect us so that we can do our work. Right? Not to protect us so that we can continue getting rich and just living like everyone else. Right? And we're like everyone else. No, we're not like everyone else. We have a mission. And we have to have that ethic.
I just don't see the analogy here, because I feel like if you want to do effective dawah, you do have to get accepted. That'll help you big time in doing dawah, as opposed to tahajjud. You could still do fajr without the tahajjud. So I think, isn't that like the first step towards your main goal of dawah? I think you're right that our intention should be dawah, but it's like, it's almost as if you don't get accepted, how are we gonna?
I think that being accepted is not something you really have to work towards. It's something that will work itself out, right? The cultural imperative, they call it, right? The cultural imperative, okay? You need to be, so we always say that Islam needs to take the form of the culture that it's in. I believe, just my opinion here, that you don't need to try that. It'll work itself out. Because all these youth are Americans, right? When they get dressed, when they talk, when they interact with people, their entire culture is American, right? Their humor, their entertainment, it's all American. Why do we need to, you don't need to work on it, right? It will happen by itself. Like Muslims, wherever they went, they say, the Muslims, wherever they went, they took on the culture of those people. Well, they did, because that's by default what's going to happen. When you're an Arab and you move to Andalusia, okay, your kids are going to be what? Andalusian, right? That's all they know. So when they build, they're going to build something that looks Andalusian, because that's what they know, right? So I believe that the cultural imperative maybe requires maybe 5% of our efforts, a small percent of our effort. It will work itself out, right? But the mission is more important. I mean, let's ask ourselves. Let's go to the Sirah. All right, let's go to the prophets. What are our examples? Prophet Yunus, alayhi salam. He went from Jerusalem to Iraq. What did he do? He gave the dawah straight away, right? He gave the dawah straight away. Like, I need an example of what prophets did. And it looks to me that prophets and their companions worked 100% on the mission, right? And they knew that human beings, okay, they want guidance, they love, they recognize truth. But again, the issue of acceptance is, we're not foreign. You're all born here, right? Most of us are born here. So, I don't know, I think it's a matter of opinion. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent us here with a message, and we should just deliver that. We're not foreign, and people know what a Muslim is. We just need to keep doing what we have to do. And there is a limit, by the way, on tabligh. I didn't mention this, but I should. When it comes to tabligh, okay, there's a time and place for tabligh. There are certain times that you should not do tabligh. For example, on the job, you're hired to do a job, right? It may not necessarily be the best place to do tabligh, right? You're looking over your cubicle, hey, you believe in God, right? Doesn't seem like it's gonna make people awkward, right? Second thing is your neighbors. You don't choose your coworkers, you don't choose your neighbors, right? So, tabligh, in my opinion, should be in a setting and an environment that both people are willing to be there, right? So I think we should be cautious about neighbors and coworkers, and in that case, your being an example is sufficient. You're being a good example is sufficient, because you don't want to make them feel awkward. Why is that? Because in our culture, people don't like to be told what to do, especially when it comes to beliefs, religion, right? So you may actually get a reverse effect. Okay, a reverse effect.
Like with acceptance, like I feel like I'm not really clear with what you meant by acceptance. Like I'm hearing it, but in my mind it's like, but if they don't accept the things that we're trying to do, it's not going to make a platform for Dawah or anything. For me, acceptance is something that is respectable.
Look, acceptance, the only acceptance you have to worry about is the law, right? Is there a law treating Muslims any differently?
Not yet.
Not yet, right? This will be a big problem if it is, okay? So, the law allows you to talk. The law allows you to do these things, okay? The law is the only objective way to measure acceptance, right? You're allowed to talk, okay? You gotta convince people, that's it, okay? But how do you measure acceptance, right? People always say we want to be accepted. Is it that you're showing up in Hollywood movies? Like they have a hijabi in a movie? Or they have a hijabi in a show? Like recently there's some show that has a hijabi in it. It didn't make any sense either. Huh? Yeah, they got that. Huh? And in the one about the hacker.
Oh, Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
Very good
That's
show.
right. So they put a hijabi with like all the weirdos who are hacking. They got a hijabi. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. And she just goes out like this is what we call in Arabic siyah. Siyah meaning like going out at 11 p.m. and don't you have a house to go to? And she's like out in the middle of Coney Island and hacking away and doing all these crimes. But she's wearing a hijab. How does that make any sense? Really?
In the show, they were making fun of her. He said that, she's a very calm person, but she has a little bit of Allahu Akbar in her.
Oh yeah.
Meaning, like,
You never know what's gonna happen, right? So I mean, the thing is that, is this the goal? Really? Is this what makes you happy? To me, it doesn't make me happy. Right? This is not a big deal. This is not what makes me happy. To show up in a Google commercial or a Coke commercial is a little neat, fine, but it's not the goal. That's not it's not an accomplishment. Oh, who's the greatest celebrity? Maybe in American history, Muhammad Ali. And after him, Michael Jordan. They're both black. Has that changed the situation of black people? Right? It's gotten worse. Right? It's gotten worse. This is not the goal. Right? So yeah, acceptance is a little thing, but it's not really a big deal. There was a hand up with that back there.
I just have a quick comment. I think the idea of acceptance for me is like the people that fight for acceptance. It's like the narrative is kind of like we're just like you. We're Americans.
That's
like
always
you.
the narrative.
Yeah, but we're not just like them. I think that's the difference.
That's a big.
We have to embrace that idea that we're not just like them. We're different.
That's You see, acceptance is an acceptable narrative for ethnicities and races, right? And for example, if there was all of a sudden some people from Tajikistan moved into Piscataway, right? MCMC community's gotta accept them, right? You're gonna have Tajik food for Ramadan, okay, for iftar. You're gonna have to have what caters to them, because that is something Allah created them like that, right? That's acceptance is for ethnicities and races, where they're all equal. But again, that narrative of acceptance comes from a standpoint where we're just like you. And if you believe that, you got a problem. You have been given a message of haqq to people who don't have it. You got to come to them. I go into one of the masajid here in New Jersey, and the first thing on the wall is a newspaper article that says, "We Muslims, we're just like you." Really? SubhanAllah. That's what you. That's it. You're no different. Then why be Muslim then? Right? SubhanAllah. Yeah.
Like, I understand the rhetoric that you're saying, but at the same time, like, with the terrorism and everything, that is more highlighted, and there's not much TV space showing that Muslims are actually humans and they're not just blowing up randomly. I think the acceptance comes from that you know, we're humans. We are someone who breathe and who eat and who
Yeah, I
do
don't mind those
everything.
things. Those type of things I don't have a problem with. Like, I understand where they're coming from, but the main goal. So don't get like I'm canceling all these things, but the main goal has to be greater than we're humans. Like we've gotten to that level. Right? We gotta have a greater vision, even if that's part of it. So see what I'm saying? Like, tahajjud is still part of the deen, right? But if you're missing fajr, you got a problem. So likewise, priorities. So acceptance and all what you're saying and all the people, these things that these people are doing, I would have no problem with it if I also saw that those people had the number one priority in place, which is that we have a mission to give people dawah, to give people the message, right? If I saw that they had the number one priority, I wouldn't have a problem that they have 2 through 10. But for them, for people, what I see in our general community of American Muslims, that we got priority number 3 and 4, and we don't have 1 and 2. So there's a problem. That 3 and 4 is null and void, and a sign of your ignorance, right? And this is why this concept, we really need to revive this. This concept is so lost, right? It's so lost, right? That we have something greater to give. And the Sahaba, they were beaten and abused, so they didn't care what they faced. They didn't care what people said about them, right? You never see it anywhere the Prophet ﷺ go into the Quraysh and say, "Please stop beating my people. Please stop thinking, please love us, right? Like us. We're people just like you." This is a joke. This is so inferiority complex. That's what it is. I guarantee you it's inferiority complex. And it also comes from it. Because you go to the African American community in the hood, they're not trying to be like anyone else. They want to be different from everyone else. They want to see where's society going. We're going to do the opposite, right? Because they have an antagonistic relationship with the society. We don't. Arabs and Desis, we don't. We have a decent relationship with the society, right? So it all comes from other mindsets, right? Other mindsets. Anyone else have anything to say?
I'll just,
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
No, I mean, this last point that you just mentioned, that the bleed doesn't really, you don't do it to neighbors and coworkers,
If it's going to make them uncomfortable, yeah. Because
Which
you
in
want
our
it to
culture-
background.
which in our culture will, right? So I mean, I don't know about everybody here, but 99% of our interaction with non-Muslims is coworkers and neighbors. So in essence, your character, I mean, that is basically dawah in essence in practical terms.
In practical terms, the best thing you could do for people who are very touchy, right? And our suburban Americans are very touchy, okay? Is just having good character, right? Mowing your lawn, making sure the garbage is not out when it's not supposed to be out, taking care of the front of your house, all these things that keep the property value up, right? All these things that the suburbanites care about. But dawah can be done by having a hall, renting out a hall, inviting people, and then giving them dawah. But not what's called like a bait and switch, which means hey, come for a little dinner. Then we hit him with the dawah. No. No. Explicit and overt, this is Islam. Today we're going to talk about Islam and we're going to invite you to Islam. And you'll be surprised, people will show up. We just don't do it. And I'll tell you who does it. Yusuf Estes, right? Yusuf Estes, who everyone says that guy's a little bit crazy. No, he's not crazy, he's good, right? He knows what he's doing. He might have some things here and there. Everyone does. But Yusuf Estes is explicit. He rent out a hall, and Zakir Naik too. They rent out a hall, and they say, this is what Islam is, who wants to become a Muslim? And people's hands go up. I'm shocked people show up in the first place. Because we are so used to people being very touchy. But if you go to big cities like New York, like London, or like Kuala Lumpur, where they have these events, there are always in the cities lost souls. They're looking for something. They're looking for something to be part of. So they go out to these big cities, they rent out halls. And Yusuf Estes has done it in San Antonio, he's done it in South Carolina, okay? Rent out a hall with the explicit invitation. You're going to learn about Islam today, right? Okay. So there's no tricks, right? No tricks. He gives them the dawah, and you can watch these things on YouTube. He gives his talk, and you're like, are you serious? Is he actually giving this talk to non-Muslims? What? People love honesty. They love honesty, right? You'll be surprised. Allah guides people how He wishes. He gives the talk, okay, with no apologetics involved at all. He does not apologize for a single thing. Okay? Then he says at the end of the talk, raise your hand if you want to become a Muslim. And hands go up. Right? I'm sitting here. This is insanity, right? And it's so good. It's obviously good, but I'm like, that's how easy it was? That's how easy it was, and that's how easy it is. Because people do want. And the 2 times I actually did that, it worked. Because I saw his video, I was like, well, he's not any smarter than anyone else. We can do this too. I gave a talk at Rutgers in Newark, and NJIT in Newark. And both times, after the talk, is there anyone here who's not a Muslim? All right, that's before the talk. So I got a show of hands. Then afterwards, anyone heard this talk and now wants to become a Muslim, raise your hand. And both times I got one guy, right? So we are nervous for some reason to give dawah. Why don't we just do it explicitly? Right? Rent out a room, put out advertisements, put free edible arrangements, chocolate-covered bananas, and pineapples. People love free stuff. Have a dinner, and this is what Islam is, right? You'll see people raise their hand at Islam, okay? So I'm telling you, people are lost, and in the inner city especially. We don't go. This is how you want to do dawah. You want to do dawah? Go to where there's a city like New Brunswick with loads of lost souls in New Brunswick. People with no family, students who are lost, people who are depressed, people who are poor. Have a free dinner. This is what Islam is. No tricks involved, right? No tricks involved. You advertise this for 2-3 weeks. The day comes, you have the speaker, he gives a strong talk. Who wants to become Muslim now, right? And people have to. So I like the dawah to be explicit and there, right? And then outside of it, don't do tricks. You either give dawah or just be a good Muslim. That's it. Wallahu ta'ala, but that's my approach to it. All right, any last goes? Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka.
Oh, one quick announcement for everyone. If you like
Yeah,
to...